When I was 14, one of my closest friends, Emily, lived in what people in our town quietly referred to as the wrong neighborhood. Not abandoned, not dangerous, just built on land that made adults uncomfortable. Old rumors said it had once been a burial site. Nothing official, just whispers and half-jokes that never sounded like jokes after dark. Emily constantly talked about how her house was haunted, footsteps at night, doors opening, strange sounds. But from my perspective, her house was perfect. It was large, warm, and beautiful. One of the nicest homes in the area. Her mother, Mrs. Carter, was the kind of mom everyone loved. She baked constantly, decorated for every holiday, and made the best breakfasts imaginable. Chocolate chip pancakes, crispy bacon, powdered sugar dusted just right. I spent more time in that house than my own. One weekend, Emily hosted a sleepover. 6 of us crowded into her bedroom, air mattresses covering every inch of the floor. Her dad was out of town, so it was just us and her mom in the house. Emily always slept with her bedroom door open, and at the top of the stairs, between her parents' room and hers, there was a large industrial fan they ran every night to drown out the sounds the house made. I hated that fan. Its constant hum made it impossible for me to sleep. I was lying on an air mattress near the open door, staring into the hallway, wide awake. This was before smartphones, so I had no idea what time it was. All I could hear was that fan. Then I heard footsteps. I immediately paid attention because her parents' door always made a soft click when it opened. I heard it, then the stairs. That staircase had 2 steps that always squeaked, no matter where you stepped. I heard both of them squeak clearly as someone went down. I had no doubt it was Mrs. Carter. A little later, I heard movement in the kitchen. Cabinets, dishes, a pan sliding across the stove. I smiled to myself, already thinking about pancakes. Now fully awake, I waited for her to come back upstairs and wake us. But time kept passing. Too much time. The fan kept humming. The room stayed quiet. Slowly, warm morning light began to fill the hallway and the bottom of the stairs. I shifted so I had a clear view of the staircase. That's when my heart stopped. Mrs. Carter stepped out of her bedroom. I froze. She walked calmly into the hallway and started down the stairs. I knew, without a doubt, that she had never come back up after the first time. I would have heard it. Those steps always squeaked. Always. As she descended, I suddenly smelled fresh pancakes and bacon, warm and sweet. That smell hadn't been there earlier when I heard the kitchen noises. She reached the bottom of the stairs, turned toward the kitchen, and disappeared from view. Moments later, she came back upstairs, smiling softly, and said, "Girls, breakfast is ready." I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I watched her wake everyone else as if nothing strange had happened. No one noticed. No one questioned it. Nothing else happened that day. But after that night, the house was never the same for me. I started hearing footsteps stop outside closed doors, seeing shadows where no one stood, feeling watched in empty rooms. I never slept near the stairs again, and I never asked Mrs. Carter if she remembered going downstairs that night, because deep down, I don't think it was her the first time. When my mother was a child, somewhere between the ages of 5 and 7, my grandparents moved into a small house at the edge of town, ironically right next door to the house they live in today. At the time, it seemed like a harmless move. The neighborhood was quiet, the house looked normal, and nothing about it hinted at what was hidden beneath its floors. The woman who sold them the house was strange from the beginning, polite but distant, avoiding eye contact, speaking in short, uneasy sentences, and appearing far too relieved when the sale was finalized. My grandparents brushed it off, assuming she was simply an odd person. Within a few months, my mother began complaining about her bedroom. She said she heard footsteps pacing slowly at night, stopping just beside her bed. She heard objects fall, books, toys, yet when the lights came on, nothing had moved. Sometimes she whispered that someone was calling her name from the corner of the room. My grandparents didn't believe her. They assumed she was seeking attention or sneaking out of bed, and when the noises continued, she was punished and grounded for lying. Everything changed one night when my grandfather heard it himself. He was awake late when a violent noise erupted upstairs. Heavy footsteps, loud pounding, and a frantic rattling that didn't belong in a quiet house. Furious, he rushed up the stairs, ready to confront my mother. When he opened her bedroom door, he froze. The pull string of the ceiling fan was twisted tightly, coiled upward, as if wrapped around an invisible hand. In the corner, the The rocking chair was slamming back and forth at an impossible speed, moving as though something unseen was shaking it. My mother was pressed against the wall, screaming in terror. Then, without warning, everything stopped. No slow fade, no final sound. Just absolute silence, as if someone had snapped their fingers. My grandfather grabbed my mother and ran. He didn't question what he had seen. He locked them in his bedroom, went into the closet, fell to his knees, and prayed out loud, begging God to remove whatever had entered that house. He prayed until his voice broke. The next day, while my mother and her brothers were at school, my grandparents ripped up the carpet in that bedroom, desperate for answers. Beneath the padding, carved directly into the wooden floor, was a large summoning circle. Strange symbols were etched deep into the boards, surrounded by salt and dark, crusted stain that looked unmistakably like old, dried blood. That was when the truth became clear. The woman who had lived there before them hadn't just been strange. She had been performing rituals in that room. A priest was called immediately. He blessed the house again and again, praying over every room. He warned them never to speak the previous owner's name inside the house. Eventually, the activity stopped, but the fear never did. Not long after, my grandparents moved out. Even now, decades later, my mother refuses to talk about that room, and my grandparents live right next door. But they will never step foot inside that house again, because whatever was summoned, there was never meant to be called back. The last stop before nowhere. I had been driving for hours, the road stretching endlessly ahead of me. The lights were dim, the sky completely black, and exhaustion was slowly creeping into my eyes. I tried to fight it, rolled down the window, turned the music up, but my body needed a stop, any stop. When I saw the glow in the distance, I felt relief. An old, lonely gas station. A worn-out sign read, "Last stop for 60 miles. I didn't think twice. I pulled in and parked. No other cars, no voices, no movement, just the sound of the wind. Inside, the store was small, lit by harsh white lights that made everything feel wrong. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged man with a pale face and tired eyes, as if sleep had abandoned him long ago. He stared at me for a moment before asking, "Traveling alone?" I nodded. I didn't know why, but the question sent a chill down my spine. I grabbed a cup of coffee. It tasted awful, but it was enough to keep me awake. As I approached the counter, I noticed he kept glancing towards the window, toward my car. He spoke quietly. "If you see something strange, don't go outside." I laughed nervously and asked, "Like what?" He didn't laugh. Instead, he pointed to a small security monitor behind him. My car was clearly visible on the screen, and beside it, a shadow, not a clear person. No features, just a dark shape, standing completely still. I immediately turned toward the window. Nothing. The lot was empty. I looked back at the screen. The shadow was still there. My voice dropped to a whisper. "How is that possible?" He replied calmly, in a way that unsettled me. "Some things can be seen, but not truly observed." My heart started racing. I tried to convince myself it was just a camera glitch, but something in his voice felt real, too real. I sat down to wait. Time felt heavy. Every time I checked the monitor, the shadow was a little closer to the building. Then I noticed something off. The timestamp on the screen wasn't changing. The same minute, repeating. I looked at him. "The camera isn't live, is it?" His expression froze for a brief second before he said, "Not everything here moves with time." That's when I realized I hadn't stopped at a gas station. I had stopped at a place that didn't want me to leave. I stepped back and felt something cold behind me, the mirror. I looked into it, and I saw myself, standing outside next to my car, exactly where the shadow had been. I gasped and spun around. The man was gone. The monitor was dark. The lights flickered out. Only one thing remained. The sign outside reflected in the glass, but the words had changed. "Last stop for you." I don't remember how I got out or how I drove away. All I know is that I woke up at sunrise, parked on the side of a completely different road. My phone was full of unread notifications, and time was moving normally again. But since that night, whenever I look into my rearview mirror at night, the back seat is not empty. So if you ever come across a lonely gas station in the middle of nowhere, don't stop. Even if you're tired, even if you're alone, because some places don't sell fuel, they take you instead.